deep dive into it. This is the Iranian supreme leader. First comment since the truce.
The U.S. president said that Iran should surrender. That means there's no more enrichment. It's the question of Iran to be surrendered. To mention the word Iran is too much for the mouth of the U.S. president to even pronounce it, to say it. A great Iran and the word of surrender, they don't match. They don't match with each other. It's a joke. It's a ridiculous thing to say. I would like to congratulate the great nation of Iran. I want to congratulate them for a few reasons. First, I would like to congratulate them for victory over the fake regime of the Zionist regime. With all those claims that the Zionist regime were making, they almost were crushed under the blows of the Islamic government.
Somebody tell me, is this saving face, or do y'all think that he really believed this? And I know that it's a lot of narratives, it's a lot of posturing going on, it's a lot of people that believe a lot of things. How you gonna talk shit, but you was just hiding and you didn't even want to know, you didn't want people to know where your location is? That's my thing. Like, how are you going to talk tough, but you was just hiding? And here's the worst part about it. Trump said, we know where you at. We know where you hiding at. Now, I believe that 100%. I believe that they knew exactly where he was hiding at, and at any point, they could have came and got him. They could have sent the UAP shebang to come and take care of it. How you gonna talk stuff and you just got out of hiding? I don't believe that he really believed this. I believe that this is just a save face. He's trying to maintain power. He's trying to maintain a level of supremacy. I think that the biggest thing that you're going to see over the next however many days is they're trying to maintain power, including making sure that they don't have a regime collapse. That is the biggest thing. I don't think that this war was ever about a nuclear weapon. I don't think that this war was ever about the Iranian people. I believe that this war was 100% was about the regime that was in place and that they didn't meet the expectations. And so whenever you want a regime change, then you go to war. JC, 100%. Anytime you want a regime change, you create a different narrative and you go to war. You tell the people that they oppress, that they can be like the West, that they can have more freedom, and then you go to war. You can't talk stuff from a hiding spot that we know where you at.
Under the blows of the Islamic government.
All right, group chat is back. Bringing back Holly Daggeris. We were just talking about.
Now remember that we're on CNN. We on fake news CNN. I like to get my sources from multiple different places because we don't want to just stay on one side of the fence. We want to look at all of the information and go from there.
Now we are seeing an image. We haven't verified the image. What are your instincts as you're watching it?
Well, he looks exhausted and very worn out, and I would assume rightfully so, given the events of the past 2 weeks, this war. And I think it's noteworthy that they're showing his face. I think they wanted to make a point that this man is alive, that the Supreme Leader is still around because of a lot of the conversations on the ground, like the questions about where is he? Is he still alive? So I think this was like a signaling that the Islamic Republic is still functioning for the time being.
Yeah, and Jasmine, I don't know to you, but the timing happens just when the Trump administration had planned to have their own kind of show and talk about this. Netanyahu in Israel is also dealing with a corruption trial that has resurfaced. Can you talk about the timing going into this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of what Iran is doing is also playing to their domestic audience. And so for the White House's perspective, they're constantly trying to figure out what is for the domestic audience in Iran and what is for them, what they should be be responding to. And so I'm sure that you're going to hear the president respond to some of these claims potentially. Maybe we'll hear some at the 8 a.m. But they're constantly trying to sift through what they need to be consuming as they try to deal with this issue and what should be kind of left to the wayward for Iran and the Iranian people.
I think that this issue, when you're looking at this whole thing with Iran, it is just a fascinating time to see us all in America talking about this country again, talking about this region of the world again, and what we're trying to do with it as our country is trying to, our country's trying to engage with it. Today at 8 o'clock, I'm quite fascinated to see how the White House will try to finally put this to bed. They clearly really care a lot about this moment and about how these strikes have been covered. And I think that we're going to see today just what that spin's going to look like.
Jerusalem, last word to you.
I just think it's hard when no one in America wants to see this war. When after 9/11, there was a groundswell of frustration and anger genuinely from the Democratic public that wanted to see action in the Middle East. That's not where we are right now. Most people don't want to see, let alone boots on the ground, they don't want to see much more action in the Middle East, another forever war.
An Iran's supreme leader lashing out at the U.S. in his first public comments since the ceasefire with Israel took effect. It comes as President Trump is still insisting that those nuclear sites in Iran were totally obliterated, his words, despite a preliminary assessment from the Pentagon's own intelligence arm that found those strikes set back Iran's program not by years, but by only a few months. CNN was the first to report that assessment. But new this morning, the head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog says the centrifuges at Iran's Fordo nuclear facility are, quote, no longer operational after the strikes.
I believe that CNN has a vendetta and an agenda against Trump. I'm sorry about that. I'll edit it out. I think that CNN has a vendetta and a narrative that they want to create against Trump. And I don't know who at the top absolutely hates Trump. I don't know if they had a business deal that went bad. I don't know what's going on. But I believe that CNN, even more so than MSNBC, I would think that MSNBC is a lot more liberal than CNN, especially with some of the programming and the narrative that's being created over there. But on top of that, separately from that, I believe that CNN truly has a vendetta. I was looking at Bernie Sanders on Joe Rogan, and Bernie Sanders got destroyed by Joe Rogan because Trump was suing different news organizations. And Bernie Sanders was basically saying, I don't agree with Trump suing certain news organizations because, it prevents, it leads to authoritarianism. And Joe Rogan says, no, when you're putting out false polls, when you're editing footage, when you're creating false narratives and all of this stuff, it's one thing to give your opinion of about what Trump did. There's another thing when it comes to creating or saying that something is fact that's not, when you're putting out false information and all of that type of stuff, then it becomes a lot more egregious. But I think that CNN has largely been caught up in trying to, I need a red light for my mute button. Yeah, I'm going to take care. I do need to take care of that. I think that CNN largely is getting caught up in trying to paint a picture and a narrative against Trump, and it's backfiring tremendously. So, the Iranian leader is coming out of hiding and now saying that this is a great victory for Iran. In reality, they weren't even interested in negotiations, and they kept on rejecting ceasefire calls until you started to see the United States of America become a lot more forceful inside of, with this whole war with Israel, which I don't necessarily agree with everything that's happening with Israel either. But I do understand that this led to these whole conversations toward Iran is now having conversations about peace talks, permanent peace talks. Now, I was talking to Myron Gaines the other day, and Myron was telling me that he doesn't believe that this is going to lead to peace, permanent peace long term, that the ceasefire would be temporary. He might have a point there. He's a lot more knowledgeable about the situation than I am. But as of right now, as of today, we do have peace. And I believe that this is him just trying to save face. This is the Iranian supreme leader trying to save face and trying to keep his regime intact.
This is before and after an image of that site, which is
oh shit.
That found those strikes set back Iran's program not by years, but by only. And the head of the CIA now saying there is credible evidence that the strikes, quote, severely damaged Iran's nuclear program. Also new this morning, those first comments in days from Iran's supreme leader. He claimed Iran, quote, crushed Israel and said the U.S. did not gain
crushed Israel
in this war. President Trump says U.S. and Iran will meet next week on a possible nuclear deal, but Iran has declined to confirm that meeting. We start with CNN's Elena Treen, who is at the White House, as she always is for us in the morning. We are learning a lot of different things. There's a lot of different words being used to describe exactly what happened, depending on who you talk to. What are we expecting to hear out of this news conference today?
Yeah, Sarah, I mean, look, we are 4 days out now from those U.S. strikes on these Iranian nuclear facilities. And it's clear that not only we are trying to learn more, but also we are getting increasingly more intelligence coming from this administration regarding the extent that those strikes did to damage those nuclear facilities. And essentially, the question of whether they were severely damaged, they were moderately damaged, or if they were totally obliterated, as the president has been saying repeatedly now. Now, you mentioned it, but I want to repeat it again. We have now heard from the CIA director, John Ratcliffe. His words were that the strikes had, quote, severely damaged Iran's nuclear program. Then we also heard from the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, who said that on the basis of satellite images, given the power of these bombs and technical characteristics of the centrifuges, that we do know now that they are no longer operational, referring to the centrifuges at Fordow. Now, of course, we are continuing to hear, Sarah, that much of these different intelligence reports are still preliminary. They're still trying to gather more evidence. And we are still waiting as well to see if and when people are actually going to be able to go to these sites physically on the ground and look at these different sites and really observe the damage face to face, as the president suggested yesterday when he was at the NATO summit that people were doing. Now, really, this entire subject, Sarah, dominated the NATO summit yesterday, and particularly that press conference we saw at the conclusion of the summit, where the president not only was answering questions about this, but also clearly wanted to focus on some of these intelligence analyses, and also really try to downplay that report from the Defense Intelligence Agency, which I should say, for people who don't know, is the intelligence agency. It's an arm, the intelligence arm, really, of the Pentagon, and the director of it is actually the principal intelligence advisor to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Now, we did hear as well from the president, but also Hegseth say yesterday, reiterating over and over again this new intelligence analysis that they said had moderate to severe damage to these different nuclear sites, really trying to focus on the latter part of that severe damage. And then we heard, the president come out and continue to say, as well as Hegseth, that those sites were obliterated. All to say, Sarah, I think it's really important to note that, one, I don't think anyone is, trying to refute the courageous and valiant efforts of those soldiers and people in the military who flew those planes and carried out these strikes. The question is how much damage was really done to those different sites as the United States continues to assess really what the next steps are and how to move forward here.
So that is what's happening as far as the Iranian supreme leader coming out of hiding and is now talking big talk.